Hi, third grade. This is your first reading workshop lesson. So if you already did reading workshop live with me, then you do not need to watch this video or the other video. All you need to do is complete the flip grid. Okay, this book is called A Bad Case of Stripes. And it is actually about a girl who's a little nervous for her first day of school. And something pretty big happens to her. I thought it'd be fun to read because it's not too much about the first day of school, but again, it does take place in the beginning on the first day, and it also has a really good lesson. Okay, and today we're going to think about what is the lesson that this author is trying to tell us by writing this story. What did our author want us to learn from the story? All right, here we go. I will show pictures once I'm done reading the page. Camilla Cream loved lima beans, but she never ate them. All of her friends hated lima beans, and she wanted to fit in. Camilla was always worried about what other people thought of her. Today she was fretting even more than usual. It was the first day of school, and she couldn't decide what to wear. There were so many people she wanted to impress. She tried on 42 outfits, but none seemed quite right. She put on a pretty red dress and looked in the mirror. Then she screamed. Her mother ran into the room and she screamed too. "Oh my," she cried, "you are completely covered with stripes." Oh my goodness. This was certainly true. Camilla was striped from head to toe. She looked like a rainbow. Mrs. Cream felt Camilla's forehead. "Do you feel all right?" "I feel fine," Camilla answered, "but just look at me." "You get back to bed right now," her mother ordered. "You are not going to school today." Camilla was relieved. She didn't want to miss the first day of school, but she was afraid of what the other kids would say, and she had no idea what to wear those crazy stripes. Yeah, what do you think she's worried about? Yeah, she's probably worried that people won't have nice things to say about what happened, about her stripes. That afternoon, Dr. Bumble came to examine Camilla. "Most extraordinary," he exclaimed. "I've never seen anything like it. Are you having any coughing, sneezing, runny nose, aches, pains, chills, dizziness, drowsiness, shortness of breath, or uncontrollable twitching?" "No," Camilla told him. "I feel fine." "Well, then," Dr. Bumble said, turning to Mrs. Cream, "I don't see any reason why she shouldn't go to school tomorrow. Here's some ointment that should help clear up those stripes in a few days. If it doesn't, you know where to reach me." What do you think? Will it work or not? The next day was a disaster. I guess it's not going to work. Everyone at school laughed at Camilla. They called her Camilla Crayon and Knight of the Living Lollipop. She tried her best to act as if everything were normal, but when the class said the Pledge of Allegiance, her stripes turned red, white, and blue, and she broke out in stars. What does she look like? Right, and when we say the Pledge of Allegiance, a lot of you face the flag, and now she looks like the flag. So she doesn't have rainbow stripes anymore. Now she looks like an American flag. The other kids thought this was great. One yelled out, "Let's see some purple polka dots!" And sure enough, Camilla turned all purple polka dotty. Someone else shouted, "Checkerboard!" And a pattern of squares covered her skin. Soon, everyone was calling out different shapes and colors, and poor Camilla was changing faster than you can change channels on the TV. Yeah, look, she's got a lot going on there because they just kept yelling things out, and every time they yelled something out, she turned into it. But they're going so fast that now it's a mess of all these different things. That night, the school principal called. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Cream. I'm going to have to ask you to keep Camilla home from school. She's just too much of a distraction, and I've been getting calls from parents. They're afraid those stripes may be contagious." Contagious. What does the word contagious mean? I'm going to tell you in 3, 2, 1, go. If you need more time to think, then hit pause and hit play when you're ready. So the word contagious means like the germs could spread. Like you could also get, if somebody's sick, you could also get that sickness by being around them. So parents called the principal asking Camilla to stay home because they don't want their kids to break out in the stripes. Camilla was so embarrassed. She couldn't believe that 2 days ago everyone liked her, and now nobody wanted to be in the same room with her. Her father tried to make her feel better. "Is there anything I can get you?" he asked. "No, thank you," sighed Camilla. But what she really wanted was a nice plate of, do you remember? Lima beans, right? Remember, she really likes lima beans, but she doesn't want anyone else to know. But she had been laughed at enough for one day. Yeah, she's afraid people would laugh at her because a lot of people don't like lima beans. Well, yes, I see," Dr. Bumble mumbled when Mr. Cream phoned the next day. "I think I better bring in the specialist. We'll be right over." And an hour later, Dr. Bumble arrived with 4 people in long white coats. He introduced them to the Creams. "This is Dr. Grop, Dr. Sponge, Dr. Cricket, and Dr. Young." The specialist went to work on Camilla. They They squeezed and jabbed, tapped and tested. It was very uncomfortable. "Well, it's not the mumps," concluded Dr. Grop. "Or the measles," said Dr. Sponge. "Definitely not chicken pox," put in Dr. Cricket. "Or sunburn," said Dr. Young. "Try these," said the specialist. They handed her a bottle filled with different colored pills. "Take one of each before bed," said Dr. Grop. Then they filed out the door, followed by Dr. Bumble. Yeah, look, there's 4 different doctors now. They're the specialists trying to figure out what's going on with Camilla. That night, Camilla took the medicine. It was awful. I can't imagine. If you already don't like taking medicine, could you imagine having to take a bunch of different pills? When she woke up the next morning, she did feel different. But when she got dressed, her clothes didn't feel right. She looked in the mirror, and there, staring back at her, was a giant, multicolored pill with her face on it. Oh, my goodness. So now you know how the stripes were on her skin? This time her skin just didn't change. Her whole body changed, and she looks like one large pill. And see on her face how it's all the different colors? Oh my goodness. Dr. Bumble rushed over as soon as Mrs. Cream called. But this time, instead of specialists, he brought the experts. Dr. Gord and Dr. Mellon were the finest scientific minds in the land. So they're like the most famous scientists. The experts wrote down lots of numbers. They huddled together and whispered. Once again, Camilla was poked and prodded, looked at and listened to. Finally, Dr. Gord spoke. "It might be a virus," he announced. Suddenly, fuzzy little balls appeared all over Camilla, or possibly some form of bacteria. Out popped squiggly little bacteria tails. Or it could be a fungus. Instantly, Camilla was covered with different colored fungus blotches. The experts looked at Camilla, then at each other. "We need to go over these numbers back at the lab," said Dr. Gord. "We'll call you when we know something." But the experts did not have a clue, much less a cure. Oh, man. Yeah, so like we saw her body change shape now. Whenever they said something, her body sprouted it. By now, the TV news had found out about Camilla. Reporters from every channel were outside her house, telling the story of the bizarre case of the incredible changing kid. Soon, a huge crowd was camped out on the front lawn. Yeah, they want to get a look at her so they can get a lot of people watching their news channel. The creams were swamped with all kinds of remedies, that means like cures, or medicine, from psychologists, allergists, herbalists, nutritionists, psychics, an old medicine man, a guru, and even a veterinarian, a doctor for pets. Even so, each so-called cure only added to poor Camilla's strange appearance until it was hard to even recognize her. She sprouted roots and berries and crystals, and feathers and a long furry tail, but nothing worked. She's got roots, berries, crystals, and that long tail right here. One day, an environmental therapist claimed she could cure Camilla. Close your eyes, she said. Breathe deeply and become one with your room. I wish you hadn't said that, Camilla groaned, and slowly she started to melt into the walls of her room. Her bed became her mouth, her nose was a dresser, and 2 paintings were her eyes. The therapist screamed and ran from the house. What are we going to do? Cried Mrs. Cream. It just keeps getting worse and worse. She began to sob. Ooh. So a lot of times people who like to help you relax will tell you to become one with something. Right, so you're only focusing on one thing. Well, in this case, she said, become one with the room. Just try to relax and focus on your safe space. And Camilla turned into her room. Oh my goodness. At that moment, Mr. Cream heard a quiet little knock at the front door. He opened it, and there stood an old woman who was just as sweet as a strawberry. Excuse me, she said brightly, but I think I can help. She went into Camilla's room and looked around. My goodness, she said with a shake of her head. What we have here is a bad case of stripes. One of the worst I've ever seen. She pulled a container of small green beans from her bag. Here, she said, these might do the trick. Are those magic beans? Asked Mrs. Cream. Oh my, no, replied the kind old woman. There's no such thing. These are just plain old lima beans. I bet you'd like some, wouldn't you? She asked Camilla. Camilla wanted a big heaping plateful of lima beans more than just about anything, but she was still afraid to say it. Yuck, she said. No one likes lima beans, especially me. Oh dear, the old woman said sadly. I guess I was wrong about you. She put the beans back in her bag and started towards the door. Camilla watched the old woman walk away. Oh, those beans would taste so good, she thought, and being laughed at for eating them was nothing compared to what she's been going through. She finally couldn't stand it. Wait, she cried. The truth is, I really love lima beans. I thought so, the old woman said with a smile. She took a handful of beans and popped them into Camilla's mouth. I always thought this... Oh, I'm sorry. I always thought this was funny. Her bed became her mouth. Said Camilla. Suddenly, the branches, feathers, and squiggly tails began to disappear. The whole world... I'm sorry, guys. The whole room swirled around, and when it stopped, there stood Camilla, and everything was back to normal. I'm cured, she shouted. Yes, said the old woman. I knew the real you was in there somewhere. She patted Camilla on the head. Then she went outside and vanished into the crowd. Afterward, Camilla wasn't quite the same. Some of the kids at school said she was weird, but she didn't care a bit. She ate all the lima beans she wanted, and she never had a touch of stripes again. That is the end of our read aloud for today. Okay, so now you are going to watch the next video where we quickly go over how to find the lesson in the story, okay?